Daf Yutes Amud Aleph will begin Yud Ches Amud Beis, 10 lines from the bottom of the two dots. Beishamei remain meichrim Tonorban Beishamei Amrim Layim Adam Chafasav Lenachri. A person should not sell his goods to a nachri, to a goy v'lo yeshilen v'lo yalvenu. He should not lend it to him. He should not sell it. He should not lend it. She'ela means that you're lending an item and he returns the same item. Halvo is like a loan, meaning you're lending the item and he can return an equivalent value. It doesn't have to be exactly the same item. It could be the item, it could be that the monetary equivalent of that item, or another keli that has similar value. In either event, you cannot do any of these, or even give it to a gift. There has to be enough time that he can get to his house before Shabbos. Beisil said that's not necessary. He doesn't have to get to his home as long as he's able. There's enough time that he can get to the first house that's needed to the outskirts of the city, that's next to the wall of the city. That's sufficient. And we'll see in a minute what the issue is over here. Rabbi Kiva says, no, that's not required. It's sufficient to, as long as the nachri will be able to leave the yid's house before Shabbos comes in, that's sufficient. And Omer Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, hein divrei Rabbi Kiva, hein divrei Beis Hillel. It says Rabbi Kiva is not a third shita. Rabbi Kiva is explaining Beis Hillel. There's a machlokes. What does Beis Hillel hold? The Tanakama holds that the Beis Hillel holds the person, the nachri, has to get to the house that's samach l'chaim. Rabbi Kiva says that's not Beis Hillel's shita. Rabbi Kiva's Beis Hillel says it's sufficient as long as there's enough time before Shabbos comes in that he's out of the yid's premises, then that's sufficient. Rabbi Kiva is not an independent third shita. He's just explaining the shita of Beis Hillel. What is the din over here? What is the machlokes? What is the issue? Taisus explains, Rashi and Taisus elaborates that we're not dealing over here with the issue that we had in the Mishnah previously with Shvisas Kalim, that Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to give your keli to your vessel to the goy to use on Shabbos because you're commanded to make sure that no malach is done with your kelim. We're not talking about over here. We're talking about, if that would be the case, Beis Shammai would say it's also even it would be on Wednesday or Thursday. We're talking about things which are not in that category. For instance, like a garment, where you put on a coat, a jacket, etc. There's no inyan of shvisas kelim, of no malach is being done. What is the issue over here? It looks like the gzeira is, because if the goy is carrying it and it's right close to Shabbos, it looks like he's carrying it on behalf of the yid. It looks like he's the shalich of the yid to do carrying, which is a malach of Eitzah, on behalf of the yid. Therefore, Beis Shammai says that you cannot give it to him or lend it to him or sell it to him in close proximity to Shabbos. He has to be able, according to Beis Shammai, he has to have enough time to get to his house. If there's enough time for him to get to his house, then it looks like he is doing it for himself. He's not doing it for the yid. And then the machlokes in Beis Hillel, they also agree in principle to this type of gzeira, but the question is to what extent. Now, both hold in Beis Hillel that there's no requirement that he gets to his home. There's a machlokes, is it enough that he just leaves the yid's house? That's what Rabbi Kiva holds, and then there's no appearance of he's being a shaliach. The Tanakama holds that Beis Hillel says, no, he has to at least get to a house on the outskirts of the city. In a similar type, in a different context, they say you can't sell your chametz to a goy before Pesach, Beis Shammai says that you have to make sure that your chametz, this was your chametz, even though you're giving it to the goy, it's the goy's, but it has to be enough time that he can consume it, and it will not be here when Pesach arrives. Your chametz, you have a chiyuv to make sure that your chametz doesn't exist. So you're giving it to the goy, there has to be enough time that he will consume it. Beis Hillel, no. There's no such requirement. If it's before the Zman HaIsur, then you can sell it to the goy. Rabbi Yehuda is going with the shita Beis Shammai. Rabbi Yehuda Merkuta Chabavli. Well, since Beis Shammai holds that it has to be consumed before Pesach if you have kutach habavli, which is a dip that had breadcrumbs and sour milk. So it's eaten very slowly. It's not consumed quickly. It's just a dip. So there, kutach, v'chol minei kutach, and any types of these dips, also limbkor lamed yom kanama Pesach, since it's consumed very slowly. It's even, according to Beis Shammai, even 30 days before Pesach would be also, because we can't assume that it will be consumed by Pesach. Now, why 30 days? It might not even be consumed within 30 days. But, as Rashi elaborates, that the chiyuv of biur is not chal more than 30 days. 30 days when it's shoel v'darshim binyone Pesach, that's when it's chal the chiyuv biur, to remove the chametz. Prior to that, there's no chiyuv. So even according to Beis Shammai, earlier, more than 30 days before Pesach is muter. But this type of a dip that's consumed very slowly, that Beis Shammai would hold that even within 30 days of Pesach, it's also to sell to the goy. You are allowed to give food to a dog in your chotzer, and not leviyatza, and even if the dog takes it out, you don't have to worry about that. And you can even give food to a nachri in the chotzer, notla, and viyatza, and yiskakim, and he can now take it out, and you're not worried that he takes it out. And this is even on Shabbos. So you can even give the food to the dog, even on Shabbos, and you're not worried that he takes it out of your chalzer even on Shabbos. Now, why is that so? We said before that everybody agrees that you can't give kalim, you can't give clothing to the nachri. Even Beis Hillel says it has to be out of your premises before Shabbos begins, because otherwise it'll look like he's doing the shlichus for the yid. So really we have two issues over here. One issue is that why isn't there this problem, the gzeira, that if the nachri takes the food out of the premises, why doesn't it look like he's your shaliach? And the second issue is, how can you even allowed to do this tircha, to give the food to the dog or to the nachri, to do a tircha on Shabbos, when it would seem to be that you have no obligation to do this? So let's just see, the Gemara continues. So Gemara says, Hasu Lomali. Gemara asks, why do I need the case of both the dog and the nachri? Hainuhach. Seemingly it's the same thing, it's the same din. Gemara says, no. Mao, the same mahai, rami alav, hai loy, rami alav, kamash malan. You might think it's permitted in the case of a dog because you have an obligation to feed a dog. But you don't have an obligation to feed the nachri, kamash malan, that it's mutar by the nachri as well. So Taisus explains over here, there's the following matter. That if something that you don't have an obligation, like to feed wild animals, you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. It's a tircha yisera, it's not letzarech, so you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. Dogs, then we are obligated, we do have somewhat of an obligation to feed them if they have no means of having food, because the dog has no means of food, and there is the hakaras hatoiv, so to speak, for the dogs, that lo yachros kelav v'shoina in Mitzrayim by the makas b'chayros. By the nachrim, we have no obligation to feed them. However, as Taisus explains, that we are mefarnesim aniyin nachrim with ani Yisrael mibnei darkei shalom. Mibnei darkei shalom, you are allowed to give them tzedakah, so you're allowed to feed them. So over here, since what we're dealing with is a shvus, it's not a deraisa, we do allow the feeding of the nachri, to give this tzedakah to nachri even on Shabbos. Generally, you cannot be matriach on Shabbos and Leil Tzarech, therefore you can't feed wild animals or birds on Shabbos, but to give food to a dog who does not have other source of food, or to a nachri, it is permitted under these cases. So that is as far as the issue of the tircha. So the Gemara asks, why do we need both cases? You might have thought that the dog, that's mezainis of Allah, you have more an obligation, that's why you're mutter to be matriach with it, but not the nachri. Kamashalam, the nachri also permitted for this type of a reason. We considered under these circumstances that mezainis of Allah. What about the issue about how can you have the nachri take out of your premises on Shabbos? Doesn't he look like he's your shaliach to do it? So Taisa says over here, we're talking about mezainis, which normally would be consumed on the premises. So even if it happens to be that the Nachri takes it off the premises, it doesn't look like it's your shaliach, because we're talking about food that's normally eaten on the premises. People won't assume that he's doing your shlichus. If it happens to be that he takes it out, he's doing it for himself, not for the Yisrael. A person is not permitted to rent out his kalim for a nachri on Erev Shabbos. Now, Taisus explains that what we're dealing over here is not the Isser of Shvisas kalim, because if it would be an Isser Shvisas kalim, then it would not only be on Erev Shabbos. According to Beis Shammai, it would be also even on Thursday and Wednesday. Now here the Brisa says, "Lo yaskir on kalim nachri b'Erev Shabbos b'dal v'hei muter." But on Wednesday and Thursday, it's mutter. So either we're not going according to Beis Shammai, where there's no Isser Shvisas Kalim, or we're talking, like we mentioned before, about Kalim, where there's no Isser Shvisas Kalim, like by a garment. So what are we saying over here? That you can't be maskir the Kalim for the Goy on Erev Shabbos. So as Taisus explains over here, what we're discussing is a longer rental period. It was a rental period for a week or a month. So any income that's being derived from this rental is b'havlo. It's swallowed up with the rest of the income that's being received for the other days of the week. It's b'havlo, so it should be mutter. It's mixed in with other income. So the Yid is not telling the Nachri to do anything on Shabbos. There's no Amir l'Nachri Shus. He's not instructing him to do anything on Shabbos. He's not receiving income specifically for the Shabbos, because it is b'havlo. So what is the issue over here? That it's in such close proximity to Shabbos. If this arrangement is made on Erev Shabbos, it has the appearances, it looks like he's being noitel schar Shabbos. It looks like it's schar Shabbos. It just has those appearances. So that's why over here it's specifically also on Erev Shabbos, not Wednesday or Thursday. So again, the Brisa says, Tan Rabban lo yasker on kev l'nochri b'Erev Shabbos, on Erev Shabbos sabedal v'hei muter, ki yaitzu b'yem mishal chamigras b'yad nochri b'Erev Shabbos. In a similar fashion, one does not send a letter to a nochri. Again, the Isser is on Erev Shabbos, bedal v'hei muter, but on Wednesday and Thursday, it is muter. He can do it Wednesday or Thursday, but not on Erev Shabbos. If he does it on Erev Shabbos, it looks like he's the shaliach, and he's doing it on behalf of the Yid. There never was a letter of theirs in the hands of a Nachri. Never, not even at the beginning of the week. They were so concerned that would have the appearances of the Nachri doing it on behalf of the Yid, being a shalich Yid to deliver it on Shabbos, that they never handed over any of their letters to the Nachri. The Brisa says that we do not send a letter with Nachri on Erev Shabbos, elam ken kotzos leidomim, unless a price was fixed. If there was a fixed price for the Nachri to do it, then if he has a fixed price and he's not working by the hour, then it doesn't have any appearance that he's doing it for the Yid. His price is fixed. It doesn't matter when he does it, and therefore he's doing it. It's considered, it's viewed as he's doing it for himself. If he does it on Shabbos, that's his choice. So he doesn't have the appearances of being the shaliach of the Yid. Beis Shammai says there has to be enough time that he can reach his destination, has to reach his house. So we'll see how that stems with the Reish. The Gemara will discuss the Beis Hillel. They say no, he doesn't have to reach his destination as long as to get to any house that's close to the wall of the city. The Gemara, well, like kotzos. Well, what do you mean? The Reish said that it was kotzos. There's a set fee, a set price. So if there's a set price, the guy is doing it on his own. So why does he have to be able to reach his destination or any destination? Whatever he does, he's doing on his own volition. This is Hofstedter. If it was not kotzos, if they didn't set the price, then Beis Shammai says there has to be enough time that he can get to his destination. And Beis Hillel that no, he doesn't have to reach his house, any house that's close to the wall of the city. How can you learn that way? The Reisha says you cannot send it. It says that you cannot send the letter. It cannot be unless your kite says ein mishalchem igris. It's mashma that it's unequivocal. More answers like kasha. When does it have to be that it has to be kotzotz, that you have to set the price? If there is no beidor b'mas, the way Rashi learns it, it's the house of the mayor. They used to deliver the letters to the mayor. Other Rishonim learned that it's like a post office. So in either event, if there is a beidor in the city, there's a destination where letters are delivered. Then we say, even if there is no kotzos, they didn't set the price, there's no stipulation on the price, it still could be mutter as long as there's enough time, according to Beis Shammai, to get to the beidor, or Beis Hillel says to any house in the city. So, if there is kotzos, according to Beis Hillel, you can, right before Shabbos, it can be delivered. If it's kotzos. If it's not kotzos, but there's a beidor, then as long as there's enough time to either to get to that post office or the mayor's house or to any house in the city, according to Beis Hillel, then it's also mutter. But if there's no kotzos, there's no stipulation, and no beidor, then it is also on Erev Shabbos. That's the ratio that says that it's also, if it's not kotzos, it's also completely on Erev Shabbos, where it's not kotzos and there's no beidor. Ton Rabbanon, a different halach, a new halach entirely. Ton Rabbanon ein mafligim b'sfina pachas megimel yom kainol Shabbos. To go on a ship within 3 days of Shabbos is also. It has to be before that, earlier than that. What is the issue about going on traveling on a ship? Rishonim have different explanations. Some say because you might get seasick and therefore you'll share the Einig Shabbos and the Kavod of Shabbos. Taisus mentions that it's included in the Isser of like swimming, and that's part of that Isser of not swimming on Shabbos. Other Rishonim say because he might be in situations where he has to repair the ship, Pikuach Nefesh, to do any kind of malacha. Al Kol Panim, within 3 days of Shabbos, it's also to go travel on a ship or a boat. But that's only if it's not for a mitzvah. Aval Dvar Mitzvah, Shapir Dami. Then it's bar mitzvah, it is permitted. But you make an arrangement with the nochri to stop and not travel on Shabbos. But if he doesn't, you don't have to worry about that. You make a stipulation, but it does not have to be enforced. He says it's not required. That's not required. That is a very close journey. It's not far, and therefore that is mutter even on Erev Shabbos. Ton Rabban, we say, Ein Sodin ala Yorish Nochem Pachsim Gimel Yom. In a similar fashion, we say you don't wage a war on the cities of Nochrim within 3 days of Shabbos. Also, within 3 days of Shabbos, you don't wage a battle. So, Ein Sodin ala Yorish Nochem Pachsim Gimel Yom Kanem LeShabbos. But if they did, you don't stop the battle. Until you conquer it, until you completely overrun it, even if it involves even on Shabbos. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, as far as giving the clothes to the launderers, so they were machmir like Beis Shammai in this manner, and they said that they did not give it in close proximity to Shabbos, and even white clothing, which take a longer time to launder, they refrained from 3 days before Shabbos. They made sure that it was at least 3 days before Shabbos, because since it takes a long time to launder the white clothing, and they had that concern that he might do it on Shabbos. So they're machmer like Beis Shammai. But ones that are tzvuim, that are dyed, that are colored, there the launderer, it doesn't have to take that much time, it's not that difficult, so they were handed it over even Erev Shabbos. And we learn from there that the white clothing is harder to launder, more difficult than the dyed one, the colored ones. He gave certain clothing to the launderer to clean. So, and it was tzviya. It was colored. It was a colored clothing. He gave it in to the cleaners. He asks, how much are you charging for this? The same charge as the white clothing. He said to him, we already got taught earlier, we were taught by the Rabbanan, and that what you're saying is not true. And therefore, because what we just learned that to launder white clothing is much more difficult. So the charge for my colored clothing should not be the same as for the white clothing. It should be less. If a person gives his clothing to the cleaners, to the launderer, he should measure it when he gives it in. And when he takes it back, he should also measure it to make sure that it wasn't stretched or it didn't shrink. Because if it's longer, then he caused him a loss, because he stretched it out. And if it's less, then he also caused him a loss, because he shrunk it. So he should be careful and measure it when he gives it in and when he takes it back.